one of the things that you'll notice that is the reaction that arises when one does have a sense of self, strong sense of self, and conceit and arrogance, that the outcomes, it tends to create problems, negativity, resistance in people. And that's often because human beings have the tendency to feel that they are right, their opinions are more important than, say, somebody else's, and that we know and someone else doesn't know. And these sort of examples are kind of the outcomes of this attitude that will cause conflict. And so first thing that one knows is that when arrogance, conceit comes from taking oneself very seriously, taking oneself, giving self-importance. It's interesting the terminology they use. It's where you give over-importance to oneself. And that's a kind of interesting way of looking at it. That's how arrogance works, or conceit, is where you give over-importance to your own views, to your feelings, to what you want, over and above the needs of others. And sometimes that becomes very demanding, very insistent, or very forceful, and that's where the conflict arises. So one of the ways of counteracting that is to start to catch with mindfulness how one's perceiving oneself in terms of giving importance to one's feeling, giving importance to one's opinions, giving importance to one's wants and desires, and then start to say, well, what does the other person want? What does the other person need? How can I give to the others? And when we start to put our own feelings into the situation that that person is in, then it tends to make us open up, tends to reduce that quality of arrogance. And one quality which is actually very good for bringing down the sense of arrogance, and this is a very strong quality which is not easy for all human beings, not just the person asking the question, to reduce. It's actually one of the refined defilements, very hard to remove, is a sense of gratitude. Gratitude is a quality of appreciation of the situation, the people you're with, you're actually being grateful for. We notice that sort of when conceit and arrogance comes up is the mind becomes very hard and demanding, and it's often the very opposite to humility, to gratitude. And you'll find that actually developing the quality of humility, purposely, intentionally trying to develop that, of putting other people first in a situation, actually makes the mind quite happy, and it comes through this whole quality of appreciation, gratitude. It's one of the things that I notice when we travel as a group like this, as monks, and we have monks helping to look after us, the monks who are with us. One of the things you notice is that they tend to always try and put themselves last, always put the senior monks first. And there's an incredible beauty in that, and the senior monks notice that and appreciate it. It's not like you take advantage of it. It's actually, you're very appreciative of the kindness I received from Tan Moshe and the other monk. So that sense of having appreciation for that as well doesn't lead to a sense of you getting a sense of I should be doing this for me because I'm very important. It's they're doing it because of their own good qualities, their own inner beauty, and their own kind of appreciation of Dhamma and respect. So when we start to see how kind of humility, appreciation of others, and gratitude, compassion, it helps to soften the mind. Because one of the qualities of conceit, arrogance, self-importance is a very hardness of mind. The straight-backed kind of striving through, pushing people away, pushing people apart, because I need to get something first, or that's how it appears, doesn't it, when we see it within ourselves and others. And so one of the things that Buddha said is for us to actually look at also defilements. If we see a defilement in another person, say if they have, say, conceit or arrogance, then to also turn that back and ask the mind, is that beautiful, is that noble, is that inspiring, and do I want to do that, develop that quality? Is that worthy of me to develop that same quality, that unwholesome quality that a person has? And one can see very clearly that, oh yes, when someone manifests anger or arrogance or whatever it is, greed, then it's not beautiful, it's not an inspiring behaviour. And then one will turn that, instead of seeing that as criticising them, is turn it, well, do I have that quality within myself? How can I overcome that quality? And the overcoming of it is seeing what we hold as important in ourselves, and then asking and really questioning that. Do I need to hang on to that view? Do my opinions really matter? Is my opinion, do I always have to be right? It's actually a very important one. Very, very important one is, do I have to always be right? And sometimes we want to be right because we have to prove ourselves as right. We want to almost conquer other people to show that we're number one, or the alpha male, or the leader, or important. And actually, one of the things with Ajahn Chah was quite a remarkable man. As a teacher that we trained with, myself and Ajahn Chah trained with, and he, if he wanted to, can make himself appear the dumbest person in the world if he wanted to. Sometimes, and he would say people would come to him and sometimes want to test him out to see how brilliant or intelligent or sharp he really was. I want to see whether he really knows the Dhamma. Is he really an enlightened being? And sometimes he would just, if they came from this attitude of, are you really a kind of enlightened being, all-knowing? He would come from an attitude, I'm just a very simple monk who knows nothing. And he was very happy if they thought he was ignorant and didn't know. And that's interesting, because we often are trying to prove ourselves, aren't we? We want people to accept us and want to be recognised. And where's that coming from? It is coming from a want, a sense of a need. And whereas he didn't have that. Sometimes if people asked very profound questions, he would say, I don't know, you'd have to go and ask someone who's more knowledgeable than the Dhamma than I am. Because it was where they were coming from. He knew that they weren't interested in his answer. They were interested in testing him out. So he wouldn't necessarily always give them what they wanted. And the opposite, say, one time someone asked him a stupid question, he'd be quite willing to give them a stupid answer. He said one time he was sitting in a train carriage going down to Bangkok, and some young teenage boys were trying to show off to some teenage girls. And they came up to him and they just saw him as an old monk. And they said to him, "Old monk, why do you shave your head?" And he said, for fun. And he said, they ask a silly question, I give a silly answer. Yes. And that was where it was very interesting. Whereas, if someone who was very proud and saying, why is this kid sort of asking this rude question? Doesn't he know I'm a very special monk? And doesn't know anything about monks or anything like that. He didn't take that on. He didn't think that I should be somebody. And that's often where our sense of conceit and arrogance comes from. If we have a very strong idea of who we are, or who we think we should be, or who we think other people should perceive, how they should perceive us. If we have that, the stronger we hold on to that, the more we'll suffer because of that conceit. Conceit is a way of comparing myself to others. That's how conceit works. It's a way of comparing myself. Am I better than, equal to, or worse than them? And to do that, to compare, we have to have a very strong view of ourselves. Whereas if you don't have a view that you are anything or anybody, then there's nothing to compare. And so that's one way of kind of seeing the nature of how arrogance can work and how we can work away at it, is breaking down these strong views that I have to be somebody and I am somebody, and people shouldn't sort of transgress the boundaries of who I think I am. Okay. Does that help? It's a very profound question, and actually it's one of the arrogance, like the concept of mana, the conceit, is one of the last forms of defilement which is cut off by the Arahant. So even a person who has obtained to the third level of enlightenment, the anagami, still has a very subtle form of conceit. That is, they'll compare. They'll maybe compare, say, this person is more enlightened than that one, or this person has a more refined mind than that one, this one has more psychic abilities than that person. It's still comparison, but it's only the fully enlightened Arahant that still doesn't make those comparisons. So it is not something that's easily overcome, but it's actually very important to be aware, and it's a very good question.